Wednesday evening service. If you would, get a psalm, turn to page 261. And you should have, I tried to have my Scott Kennedy to have one of these. This is, I'll get you one this second. We are going to finish 17 tonight and start into chapter 18 just in a moment. We are glad Scott is with us. Brother Scott, he's actually up in the booth tonight. Had a really good vacation, he said. He said it really good. If you haven't talked. It's those kind of vacations you really don't want. I think he said he had gotten sick and didn't get to do a whole lot. And as a matter of fact, he came back. So we're glad he is able to be back with us. I know Jeremy and his family's traveling. There's others traveling tonight, and this is the week. I know a lot of people do travel on vacation, so we want to remember them in our prayers tonight, and those that are sick and not able to be with us. So tonight we'll be starting our lesson. Anybody have an announcement, updates on anybody, or anything I need to add or say at this time? Mary, she has been to the doctor. I know her blood pressure, she's had issues with that. It is a little bit better, I think, is what she was saying, but she's not back to where normal would be for her. So also remember her. And anybody else that you may have, we'll add them to our list. Brother Adam will have our song. Brother Herbert will open with the opening prayer, and then we'll get started on the lesson. 261.
When Jesus comes to reward his servants, whether it be noon or night, faithful to him will he find us watching, with our lamps all trimmed and bright. Oh, can we say we are ready, brother, ready for the soul's ride home? Say, will he find you and me still watching, waiting when the Lord shall come? Blessed are those whom the Lord finds watching, in his glory they shall share. If he shall come at the dawn or midnight, will he find us watching there? Oh, can we say we are ready, brother, ready for the soul's bride home? Say, will he find you and me still watching, waiting when the Lord shall come?
Dear Father in heaven, we thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you, Father, for the many blessings you have given us this day. Father, we thank you for this opportunity to go sit here tonight to read to control the word. Lord, you give us that to do so that we will be pleased with you. That we learn more of your will for us. That we will be able to increase our knowledge and understanding. We learn more about each other. Father, we're thankful for your Son Jesus, and for the sacrifice of him. Thank you for the hope of heaven that we have here in our witness. Father, thank you for the church, especially this congregation of your people. The same to you. Be with us, Father, striving for your will and way of day. Help us, Father, to go closer. Just stay with us. Father, we have several reminders of the secrets this time. Be free, blessed, and comfort, and also with our community. Father, we're thankful for the physical lessons we enjoy. And we'll be thankful for that program later. Go with us to next to this service. We Lord of Kings presents the lesson. First in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Anybody else need a copy of our lesson? We will, if all things go as planned, finish on chapter 17. Just to review back just a little bit, we had, my intention was to finish together 16 and 17, and for some reason I had not had 17 prepared and run off for you, even though I had studied it. And sometimes that just happens. Things just happen, and so we will finish 17 tonight, I hope. And then I've given you the chapters 18 through 20. These seem to be lessons that we study. And again, some of these things, as I give them to you, I'm not going to read all the verses because a lot of repetition in some of the things that say it. And there's a meaning there. My main point is to get that meaning out of these lessons. And to say that, if you remember, as we looked at Exodus, as he freed the Israelite nation from the Egyptian bondage and to make them his people. And remember that I told you at one point they had a lot of Egyptian culture still in them. As a matter of fact, we see that the Israelite nation was promised, and he tells them, and as a matter of fact, we'll talk about that today, he's promised them the land of Canaan. But they're not ready to take it yet because they still got too much of the old culture, old ways still in them. As a matter of fact, they're still, if you remember, at the Mount Sinai, they're still there, and they haven't moved yet. And they'll be there to Numbers chapter 10. So he brings them out of bondage, and he is in and teaching them every detail of their life. He has got a set of laws or ordinances or statutes that he's given them. He is making it very clear that you are to do this because I am holy. Be holy as I am holy. You're going to hear that phrase a lot, and we've already said it many, many times, and how that he is proposing that. We also have seen over the time that if you break the laws or you're cut off or you're outside, it's pretty harsh. The punishment is very harsh. And he is meaning straightforward for them to follow his laws, those that can or will. So, with all that being said, you know that we have seen Moses become very close to God to the point of the tabernacle of meeting where he would go and talk to God. And as the Bible says, is he would talk to anyone. So he had those conversations to the point also that Moses wanted to see his glory. And God told him, you can't look upon me because if you do, you will surely die. Also in 16, when we read that and we went over that Aaron was given warning. Don't go into the most holy place just anytime you want to. And the reasoning there is if you do that and you come into the presence of God and look upon him, you will surely die. And we talked about the Day of Atonement. That was in 16. And this is something that happened once a year. And remember, I'm kind of going back on some things. Remember, the reason for that was to cover those sins up to that point. They had to do this once a year. So we talk about the Day of Atonement, and I told you when that they said it was going to be. 7th month, 10th day. And there was like 10 days in between from the new year that was looked upon, and then you had the Day of Atonement. So as we finish out, and I'll go over this with you when we get to that point, there was a lot of feast, there was a lot of recognition, and we've already covered 5 of them, but there's a lot of things that was to be recognized when we get to the end of Leviticus, and I'll give those to you. Any question or comment up to this point about 16 that we covered? We're getting ready. As a matter of fact, I started into 17 just a little bit with you as we talked about 17. And as I started reading 17, I jumped ahead just a little bit and got into Deuteronomy, and I thought it was important to do that. But let me say a couple of things. Two themes when I look at chapter 17. Number one, the value of blood and worship. Now, I mean, when I talk about worship, I went over this the other day about being centralized and socialized. Now, this is my terms that I'm using as I say this, and I'll explain all of that just in a moment, but that's what it was coming to. And that's what he wanted. The reason for this, when we really start looking at the history, remember, the Israelite nation has still got too much Egypt in them. The old pagan rituals that they carried out. When you're in bondage for 130 years, you're going to pick up a lot of things that culture had given you. I use this example. We're still in the Bible Belt. We still have a good recognition of the Bible, what it means, and what it stands for. As we get into this lesson, we're going to talk a little bit about that. It's not like that everywhere, by the way. You know that. It's not like that everywhere. Matter of fact, things creep in. We've seen that in our own community. How the world creeps in and want the church experience. But I want what I want. I want my ways to be involved in church, but I want that church experience. And there's only one way. You got to do it God's way, right by the Bible, what the Bible says. Don't vary from that. And we see the same thing was happening with the Israelite nation. They still want to bring in the old culture that they were taught and given in sacrifices. So we'll get into that. Some things just to be noting here. A lot of people are looking for happiness. And something I had read that stuck with me, happiness is a byproduct of holiness. And I believe that. Some of the richest people in the world are not happy. They got everything, everyone wanted, and when you read some of the memoirs and the books from these people, they'll tell you. Even Solomon said it, the richest man at that time. He was not happy. And so we see that if you're going to be happy, its happiness comes by holiness. And that's the things that I've picked out of this. So 52 times the word holy appears throughout Leviticus. You heard this said a lot of times, be holy as I am holy. So a key theme word obviously is be holy and as I am holy. Okay, so let me pick up on Deuteronomy, and I read a little bit for you, but I'm going to read it again. Chapter 12, verse 1. These are the statutes and judgments which you shall observe in the land. Well, what land? Well, he's telling them when you get in to Canaan, this is what I want you to do. He's preparing the people. Now remember, they're still at Mount Sinai. They're not moving. But he's preparing them mentally and physically as they get ready to go into the land of milk and honey, what they should do. Verse 2, you shall utterly destroy all the places wherein the nations which ye shall possess serve their gods upon high mountains, upon the hills, and under every green tree. There was a lot of gods that they worship. And I went over some of them last week, and I'll do it again, but he's telling them, utterly destroy all those things, wherever they're at. And you shall overthrow their altars, break their pillars, burn their groves with fire, and you shall hew down the graven images of their gods and destroy the names of them out of the place. You shall not do so unto the Lord your God. Now that's where I'd gotten to the other day, in verse 5. But unto the place where the Lord your God shall choose out of your tribes to put his name there, unto his habitation shall you seek, and thither shall they come. Now, The thing we already know is the tabernacle is going to be the center of that community. As a matter of fact, when they get to Jerusalem, that's going to be the same setup. When they build the tabernacle, that's going to be the center of worship. And they'll be going back and forth, and they will do the Days of Atonement there. And I told you last week that they did that until about 70 AD, somewhere in there, when the Romans destroyed the temple. And so at that point in time, they didn't have that. So remember that the community that they live in, the tabernacle or in the temple, when it's soon to be, will be the center place for worship. He is wanting to be God in the center of their lives. He wants it to be the focal point of their community and their lives. And he's telling them, don't be like whatever culture, the Egyptians or whoever. And we're going to look at some in a minute, some of these things that I hope I get into it to where I can get to that point. But make it centralized in a central location and socialized where you are to come. Now, getting into that, you're going to see when I read this in a minute, where a lot of the pagan religions they were kill these animals for no reason and worship toward this pagan god. I told you there was a lot of pagan gods that they look from Ra, the sun god, even we're going to get to Mendes, the goat god, some of these that are being the focal point of their worship. And God is telling them, put that away, and we're going to be separate and holy. Okay. In verse 6, and thither shall you bring your burnt offerings and your sacrifices and your tithes and your heave offerings of your hand and your vows and your freewill offerings and the firstlings of your herds and your flocks. And there you shall eat before the Lord your God, and shall rejoice in all that you put into your hand in your household, wherein the Lord thy God hath blessed thee. He's telling them, this is what I want you to do. This is how it's going to be. Don't be like the pagan gods. Be this way. Okay, and I can go on through there. I'm not going to read all. If you look on the very bottom of 64, the top of 65, it gives you the same explanation that I gave you. Centralized, socialized worship. I do want to point out there in Acts 2:1, I thought this was a key point here. And when the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all in one accord in one place. You remember about when they was talking about this, and there got to be some controversy with the apostles were out doing the work, and some of the widows weren't getting fed, and they had to appoint some people within the community to foresee and look after the widows, to make sure they were being taken care of, because they might not be getting what everybody else was getting. And again, centralized and socialized. Make sure we take care of our family, within our family, and without the extent of our church family, to make sure we go, we visit, and we remember it says this, we visit the homeless, the widows, the poor in spirit. So these are things that we're to do, and this is what we're given by the Bible, as it teaches us the things we're to do. Now I'm going to go ahead and read start at verse 1. I hadn't even got to chapter 17 yet. I was kind of building up to this point, letting you know what this was going to be about. So chapter 17, verse 1, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, again, speaking to Moses. I notice here it didn't say Aaron. Now Aaron, at this time, I think he's got specific instructions. And you got to remember, it's not too much long after Aaron lost his two sons because they didn't do what they're supposed to do. But he gives Aaron strict instructions on how to carry out the worship. That's his job. So he's still to Moses. Speak unto Aaron and his sons and to all the children of Israel, and say unto them, this is the thing which the Lord hath commanded, saying, what man soever there be of a house of Israel that killeth an ox or a lamb or a goat in the camp, or that killeth out of the camp, and bringeth it not into the door of the tabernacle of the congregation to offer an offering unto the Lord before the tabernacle of the Lord, blood shall be imputed unto that man. He shall shed blood, and that man shall be cut off among his people. He's telling that old way of you being out in here and just doing what you want, worshiping ever how you want to worship, and not bringing it to the Lord, and making sure that we're doing this in one accord. And he says, don't do that. You'll be cut off if you do that. Verse 5. And to the end of the children of Israel may bring their sacrifices which they offer in the open field, even that they may bring unto them the Lord unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation unto the priest, and offer them for the peace offerings unto the Lord. We went over this. This is what you should do for a peace offering. If you're doing it on your own, and you're slaughtering this animal outside of the camp, or wherever you're doing this, you're in the wrong. You don't do that. Verse 6, and the priest shall sprinkle the blood upon the altar, and the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and burn the fat as a sweet savor. You know, that's mentioned many, many times about the cooking of the fat on that open fire is a sweet savor. Now, many of you, if you've ever burned wood and you're grilling something, you know what that aroma smells like. If you're cooking steaks on the grill and you've got a ribeye on there and that fat dripping, you're going to smell that sweet savor of that meat. That's what you would be referring to here. Verse 7, and they shall no more offer their sacrifice unto devils after whom they have gone a-whoring. This is a statute forever throughout their generations. It's not just now, it's from now on you're to do this. And thou shalt say unto them, whatsoever man there be of the house of Israel, or the strangers which sojourn among you, that offereth a burnt offering or sacrifice, and bringeth it not to the door of the tabernacle of the congregation to offer unto the Lord, even that man shall be cut off among his people. So you're getting a gist here about this is what you're going to do. Don't go doing your own thing. Don't go out and do whatever you want to do. It's got to be just like it's laid out in the worship. So he's telling them, he's already given the instructions for the worship service. Aaron is worshiping. He is a high priest. He's to do this. You're to be there with him if you're offering the peace offering, or if you're offering the burnt offering. There's a certain rite, R-I-T-E, that you have to do when you do this. The purpose there, and as I read this and look back and see, the goat was one of those that was considered the Mendez. I mentioned that. Actually, I've done a little more on that little study on it, and I think it's come from the Greek panos, the pan god, the goat god, and I think they trace that back. That's what they use. A lot of people is the horns coming out the tail, the picture of the old devil himself that we see sometimes is where it was originated from. I don't know that. I'm just something I had read. I'm assuming that, and it makes sense to me that we worship things. Sometimes we know that the devil, he's not going to come at a scary outfit, is he? As a matter of fact, we know Satan himself walks upon the earth, and he will guise himself as some of the best people we're taken in as humans. We're taken in daily, and honestly, he gets into the church. We see that all the time. He gets into the church, and we follow not God's ways, but we follow man's ways. And this is something that we have to be very careful. And the Bible teaches us that he's like a roaring lion, and I'm paraphrasing, walking back to and fro upon the earth, seeking who he can devour. And we know that that is true. We see it daily. We see the figment of things that go on. Anybody have something want to say? Any comments? Well, the more I read, the more I understand, the more I believe as how that. Here's my question to you. I thought about this today. Is the United States being blessed today, or are we being judged? by God. What do you think? Are we being blessed or are we being judged? I got my opinion. I think, because this is me, you may have a different opinion on this. I just didn't think of it, and I pondered on it quite a bit to bring it up. My thoughts are we're being judged. We have moved away from God. We've taken God out of everything. And unless something miraculous happens, I feel confident that we're being judged. He's not going to bless us. We're not getting blessings from things as we are working against Him. Now, sure, that we've got portions of our country that I think we still are Bible-toting, Bible-preaching congregations that do and say those things and try the best that we can. But my opinion, by a majority, I don't think that's true. And I think God will pull Himself away from our country and allow those things to happen just like He did in the Bible. If you read very much, you know that and history tells us those countries that have fallen to the world have fallen. They will surely fall. And I think, in my opinion, that we're being judged. We're not. I think He's pulled His blessings back from us, and we're just on a downhill slide. And I don't see where we can stop it. Any comment about that? Again, my opinion on that. Unless there's something there I'm not seeing, I still think God blesses us, I think in certain cases, but in generally speaking, I think He's pulling back from us because we first pull back from Him. It's obvious everywhere, from the Supreme Courts to the judges to the even to our people making decisions for this country. We catering to, more so, I guess, the last 8 to 10 years, catering to the world more than we are to God. Okay.
It seems to me that folks, in a sense of the word, abandon the Scriptures.
Sure they have.
In general, and that happens within the church.
Well,
We're seeing less and less thus saith the Lord in the various places we go.
when it becomes a crime to speak or to pray, but it's okay to kneel for other things. I don't mean that ugly, but or to recognize and uplift some sinful way. I think it's wrong. I think that's what I mean by that. It's just we have to fight to keep our freedom to worship. And I know preachers have stood right here and said there'll be a day when it's against the law of the land for me to say certain things. And he's right. I think that's why we're headed that way. Again, that's me. Okay. So let's look now in verses 10 through 16. It's a short chapter. We're going to look at the value of blood. The value of blood. This whole chapter, if you look all the way back in the worship service, the central word or thing used a lot is talk about blood. Well, if sin occurs, the only way that sin can be covered is a shedding of blood by some animal. That's the thing we've learned so far. There's going to be a shedding of blood, and now we're going to talk about the value of that blood. So let's move on. Verse 10, and whosoever and whatsoever man there be of the house of Israel, or of the strangers that sojourn among you, that eateth any manner of blood, I will even set my face against the soul that eateth blood, and will cut him off from his people. Verse 11, for the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make an atonement for your souls, for it is the blood that maketh an atonement for your soul. Well, the only way that can happen is an animal has to die. Something has to die, the blood must be shed to make an atonement for that sin. Verse 12, therefore I said unto the children of Israel, no soul of you shall eat blood, neither shall any stranger that sojourn among you eat blood. Verse 13, and whatsoever man there be of the children of Israel, or the strangers that sojourn among you, which hunteth and catcheth any beast or fowl that may be eaten, he shall pour out the blood thereof and cover it in the dust. He's talking about here any clean animal. You're hunting, you find an animal that you can eat. If you kill that animal, first of all, we have to be able to say they can't eat it if they find it dead, obviously, or if it's been killed by some other animal, they can't eat it. It's unclean. But this is a hunting, they kill this animal, they got to drain that blood. And then they got to take something and cover that blood by the soil, the dust, it's mentioned here. You got to be careful with the blood. That's the important thing here. Obviously, certain animals are sacrificed. They take that blood for an atonement. But in this case, they're talking about those that hunt and or fish. It didn't mention that there, but that is part of it too. In verse 14, for the life of the flesh, the blood of it is for the life thereof. Therefore I said unto the children of Israel, ye shall eat the blood no more, no manner of flesh, for the life of the flesh is in the blood. In other words, he's not saying you can't eat the flesh. You got to drain the blood. That's the point I got from that. You do eat the flesh, and it's not often, I don't think they did that, but they do eat the flesh. It's just can't eat the blood that's in the flesh, has to be drained. Verse 15, and every soul that eateth that which dieth of itself, and that was torn by beast, whether it be one of your own country or your stranger, or he shall wash his clothes and bathe himself, and then be unclean until the even. He shall be, and then shall he be clean. He's talking about the process of becoming clean again if he comes in contact with it. Okay, so we're talking about the process that has to happen for this. I got a few notes here I want to bring up, and I've got several things that's already listed in the summary. I've already explained all that. I'm not going to rehash that. I want you to, if you would, turn to Judges. I'm going to read something. Chapter 21. Let me pull it up. And I'm going to go all the way down to the last verse in that chapter. Judges 21, verse 25. Now, this is a different setting, don't get me wrong, but I'm going to point out something out here. In those days, there were no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. Do we see that today? Do what's right in your own eyes. We see that today. That's the problem with our country. We don't want to follow the written word because it could be, first of all, there's so many variations of the written word, in my opinion, they say. If you follow the Bible, we were talking about this some time ago, how that they talk about how we, as members of the church that we are, how we believe, and why don't you believe the whole Bible? Well, first of all, you've got to be able to understand the Bible to know what it says and what you're to follow. I think sometimes, and we do this as people, we listen to people. These people tell us what we need to think. They do that every day. That's indoctrination. Well, I'm going to step on toes here on my own. Why do you think I'm going to cross the line, I hope I don't. Why do they put drag queens in schools to teach little ones, read a book to them? You know they do that. Not around us, by the way. If you look up some up north and some other places out west, they bring drag queens in to read kids' books to them. Why do they do that? How do you indoctrinate people? Sir?
Indoctrination.
Indoctrination. You get them early. If you want to change something, you get them early. That's right. Why? The question is why. You indoctrinate. If you want to indoctrinate any country, you get to the young kids.
Started years ago, in high schools, they had beauty contests for boys dressed up like women. That was in the 60s and 70s. And I think it was starting then.
Yeah, the womanless beauty pageant. A lot of people would do that as a way to raise money, but whatever. But I'm just saying that's just an example of something that if you want to indoctrinate anybody, for whatever you want to indoctrinate, you bring them in early and put it in the schools. Yes, sir.
The Catholic Church has always motioned, give them a child to 6 years of age, all of the Catholic, they say.
Never get away from it. Indoctrination. It's indoctrination, and that's true. I still think, in the Bible Belt that we're growing up in, we still are pretty conservative in what we let into our schools. I know we are. I know the places I've been, the places that I'm associated with, we're pretty conservative. We don't let just anything in. But what you do have is the federal government tries to step in and tell you. Now remember, schools are state-run. But where they get you is they got this federal dollar sitting over here they want to bring in and give you, but you got to do what they ask you to do. That's what you got to be careful of. That's Title I, lunchroom money, anything like this. So, anyway, I don't want to go down that road too far. Any question or comment so far about 17, chapter 17? I had some more things I was probably going to mention, but just a few things to bring up. We know that Leviticus is setting apart. That's what Leviticus does. It is teaching us to set apart. Now we finished 17. We're going to get into 18, 19, and 20. There's only 27 chapters in Leviticus, and some of it I can cover fairly quick because some of it is repetition. But the thing I noticed here in Leviticus, 88 times blood is mentioned. So it's important. Matter of fact, a lot of things has been repeated multiple times. Death and sacrifices are made. That's to cover that sin of an animal. Today we don't do that. We don't have to worry about that. One time. How many times you baptized, Jim? How many times you baptized someone? One time. If they come up, they baptize in the right reason. One time. And the blood of Christ was shed for us, and that is to cover our sins and to take it away. Now the old law was to cover. Christ's blood is to take it away. Okay, that's 17. Just a few quick notes, and you should have chapters 18, 19, and 20, and just kind of say a few things about it. As we get into this, I don't have very much time, and I'm not going in detail about it, but a few things to note here in chapters that we've covered so far. Chapters 1 through 17 in Leviticus has talked about the approaching of God, from how do we approach Him in worship, what's got to happen, don't do it the wrong way, you got this to follow. When we start looking at 18 and on, it's accepting God's laws. Now, He has given these laws. Matter of fact, when we start studying 18 and 19, we're going to see the 10 Commandments in these. If you read this, and you read ahead, you noticed that a lot of things is being said is following, and he's really reiterating those 10 Commandments. Don't do this, don't do that. As a matter of fact, We look at the first part of 18 is talk about unlawful sexual relations. And let me tell you why I feel like it's important. I can tell you this from the school side of things. Teaching and learning is much easier if you have children that come from a good, well-rounded, parent-oriented life. Now, I'm not even getting into the religious side of things. I'm talking about they've got a good home life. If their home life is not good, it's hard to teach children because there's deficiencies there that you've got to try to make up. Sometimes we're put in charge of raising kids. I don't mean that ugly, but sometimes they put the cart for the horse. The school is really a reflection of the home itself. It's not the other way around. And so we look at this the same way as we look at this religion. God is going to control every aspect of the Israelite nation. He's going to have his hand in every part. We didn't talk about the worship, how to approach. Now we're going to talk about all other aspects of it. So he is setting the boundaries of do's and don'ts. That's what we're going to be talking about from chapters 18 on. Because he's preparing them when they go into the land of Canaan, how they should act, what the other people, they see them coming in, how they should be set apart, sanctified. So with all that being said, and I'm just kind of building up as we start reading this, as to a few things. The 10 Commandments, we're going to see them here. As a matter of fact, we're going to be looking at the Commandment 7. I'm not even going to tell you which one it is. You can look it up. The 7th Commandment a lot when we look at this first part. Okay. Thank you for your attention. Just in a moment, I'm going to ask Brother Jim to help me with the invitation. We got a song. What you got one picked out? 270. Brother Adam will have the song 270, and we'll have the song of encouragement, invitation, and then Alan will call on someone to close a prayer. Do you want the mic left on here?
because we never know when the call will come. When this thing will all be over. It will happen one day. I hope and pray that if you're not right in the Son of the Lord, that you will want to make things right before you leave. I realize that as children of God, we can call upon Him and ask for His help. And we can pray and ask for help from others. If there's one here tonight that needs to have the help of the Lord and the help of us, we hope that you'll come together with hands.
Why do you wait, dear brother? Oh, why do you tarry so long? Your Savior is waiting to give you a place in His sanctified throne. Why not? Why not? Why not come to Him now? Why not? Why not? Why not come to Him now? Why do you wait, dear brother? The harvest is passing away. Your Savior is longing to bless you. There's danger and death in delay. Why not? Why not? Why not come to Him now? Why not? Why not? Why not come to Him now? Number 194, be our closing song after we sing the first verse. Ask Brother Scott to lead us in our closing prayer. There's a land that is fairer than day, and by faith we can see it afar. For the Father waits over the way to prepare us a dwelling place there in the sweet by and by. We shall meet on that beautiful shore in the sweet by and by. We shall meet on that beautiful shore.
Our Father in heaven, we are thankful for this day because it's of it. We'll be disturbed by our word, Father. Help us tonight to have open and ready hearts, to take our word in their hearts, how deep in their hearts. We better serve you. We do pray for people who are sick in various conditions. We pray for their well-being, their loved ones, and those care for those people, those who are weeping, and all those people who are traveling this week in various places. We ask our blessing to be upon all of us, all of us separate. Help us prepare to be again and worship on Sunday on the Lord's Day. We ask